Good evening. Oh, it's nice to have a good hot soak. Today we're filming on Mother's Day, that glorious time of year where we get to thank our mothers for everything that they've done for us. And I thought, what better way, of course, than to dress up like a mother? Maybe slightly ill-advised, but nonetheless. Morgan Lee coming at you here on Mother's Day 2020 in the COVID era. For those of you just joining in, this is episode 6, and this is Morgan's Tasty Wine Notes. This is something that my wife and I dreamed up to inform people about the joys of Washington wine during this time of quarantine. I am the winemaker for 3 brands, 2 vintners, Covington Cellars, and City Limits. And today I wanted to talk about all the moms in my life that made me who I am today. I was very blessed to have wonderful mother and grandmothers, and I even got to know my great-grandmother for a substantial portion of my life, and was fortunate enough to marry Sally, who's an amazing mother herself. And so we're not going to taste all these wines today because Mom here would be a little schnockered. So I just wanted to show you a lot of the work that the moms in my life have done. I want to start by saying that one is missing. The original one was done by my mother-in-law, Sally's mom, Jane. And I think the vintage was 2006, and I tried desperately to find one of those bottles, or at least a label today. But in the last 10, 12 years, they have grown a little bit elusive. I know that we have a couple, but nonetheless, Jane, thank you, did the very first artist-driven label. And since then, I've tapped into many family members, including my dad and friends and other family members. But today on the table, what we're going to look at are the labels that my mom has done and also Sally has done. Last week or a couple weeks ago, we did talk about this one here, which is a label that Sally did. And this is our Ma Belle blend, a Grenache Syrah and Cinsault blend. And that is a picture that she drew out of whimsy during our honeymoon many years ago. For quite a few years we had our artist series Cabernet Sauvignon that my mom did. It's actually pieces of her graduate thesis from Purdue University. And in our original episode, our Easter Bunny episode, we showed you a rosé that my mom designed. Have a nice day. But today we are going to talk about these two, which are brand new releases to the Two Vintners lineup. We just had a wine club release 2 weeks ago. During this time, it was interesting. We've always had big parties and a lot of fun and food trucks and everything, and obviously right now that's out the window, as we are, I think, officially 75 days into quarantine here, and social distancing, and we look to be done at the end of this month, which is May, but we just don't know yet. So we're just waiting to hear from the experts on what to do next. So without further ado, we do have wine, so that is happy. That is good news, and I hope all of you out there are finding good news, whether it is in your own family or things on the internet, as it were, that give you joy. And really, I hope everybody's doing well. I know this is a hard time for homeschooling, God forbid homeschooling, and also shout out to my homeschool friends. It's difficult for us who have not done it until now. But also just, I think it's very important to find the joys in life always, but especially now. So anxiety is a real thing during all this. but it's good to just see the silver lining, and I hope you can find that. So, public service announcement out of the way. We're going to talk about this wine right here first. This is the 2018 Das Riesling. So, quick story about this. Well, first of all, the label. My mom did. So this crazy eagle just tearing apart that bunch of grapes. I started a collaboration with a German winemaker 3 years ago, and originally this wine was destined to go to the German market. I had never made a Riesling before, and found it a bit intimidating, but he said, it's easy, go for it. Well, that's not what I heard. And Riesling can definitely be a little bit fickle, but took a lot of joy in making this wine. And it's definitely not your typical Riesling, certainly not for Washington State. Side note, more Riesling is made in Washington State than any place on the planet. Riesling originally hails from Germany, and there are just lovely, lovely examples. It is also one of the most ageable white wines. A lot of the best wines I've ever had in my life were Rieslings that were 20 plus years old. So if you find the right one, hold on to it. It'll give you a lot of joy down the road. There are many, many different styles we should not have time to get into tonight, mostly due to the different levels of residual sugar. Most people think of Riesling as having a little bit of residual sugar. Some of my favorites are completely dry. And I can't go through this without giving a shout out to Alsace, which is on the border, which is a French territory on the border of France and Germany, which has over the years, over the millennia, changed hands between the French and the Germans and the people there, which I have unfortunately not visited, but you hear as much of French as you do of German, and very special area for white wines. But this version, to get back to it, is dry or devoid of sugar. And during the collaboration, the winemaker that I was working with told me that he wanted to ferment this dry, completely dry, and also put it completely through malolactic fermentation. So malolactic fermentation is something that is typically present in all red wines, and it's the conversion of malic acid to lactic acid. So lactic acid being softer on the palate. So it is performed by a yeast that, and we call it a secondary fermentation. So your primary fermentation is from sugar to alcohol and CO2. And the secondary fermentation is from malic acid to lactic acid. So not all white wines go through this. It's very stylistic. Like if you think of a rich, buttery Chardonnay, that is a full malolactic fermentation typically, whereas let's say, well, there's a lot of examples, but Sauvignon Blanc, say a lot of Sauvignon Blancs stay crisp and clean, and they do not go through a secondary fermentation. So in short, in general terms, the more kind of linear and acidic the wine is, chances are the less malolactic malolactic conversion that it's gone through. Sorry. So having said all that, very, very little Riesling goes through malolactic fermentation. Typically, it's left completely full of malic acid. So it's very it stings your palate, right? And it's really delicious. It's mouth-watering. It has a lot of acidity to it. So my goal with this was to pick it early so that we had a lot of acid to start with. And that way, when we put it through malolactic fermentation, it still had some freshness on the palate. And Riesling is very interesting. When it goes through this fermentation process, it goes through like a very butterscotchy phase where it smells like candy almost. And a little bit of that lingers in here. But I also get a lot of lime peel and honeysuckle. I think with some age, this might actually have a little bit of petroleum to it, or like a diesel smell, which you get in aged Rieslings. And Das Riesling, I've been informed, is improper because it's the wrong gender. It's supposed to be Der Riesling, but this was the cellar name that we came up with when we were producing this wine. So we pressed it into a tank where it fermented on stainless steel. We then barreled it down into neutral barrels to age for about 6 months, and the the cellar name Das Riesling just stuck, and so that's what we came up with. And the in Germany, their quality emblem is a form of an eagle, and so I asked my mother if she would make the most ridiculous eagle, but in an American sort of style, to put on this Das Riesling bottle. So this is what she came up with, and I think it's fantastic. This is definitely the whimsy of my mother's artwork from time to time. So really proud of the label. Thank you, Mom, and definitely proud of the wine. So again, very dry. Drink this wine more or less room temperature, cellar temp, like 60 degrees. Don't get it too cold. It loses a lot of its aromatics. Really beautiful wine. I know I'm biased, but being the first that we ever made at Two Vintners, I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So enjoy. And this is just is $20. When we just released it, we only made about 70 cases, and I hope you get to try it. So moving on to another new release. This is not the first of its kind. This is vintage. Let's see. The first vintage was 2009, and this is 2015. I have to bring out 2 glasses. Tragedy. So Sally and Claire put on orange lipstick, and it's all over my glass now. So all for the love of wine, right? So this is the 2015 Oliver. Oliver is our son, and my mom also did this label. My mom is and has been a professional photographer and teacher of photography in her life, and this is actually a photo of Oliver's hairline. So this is his little cowlick here, and we kind of Andy Warholed it, if you will. Oliver has always been a blend steeped heavily in Petite Syrah with different blending agents like Grenache and Cinsault and Syrah. So this one, this 2015, is 70% Petite Syrah and 30% Syrah. This comes entirely from Stone Tree Vineyard on the Wallug Slope, and it's big and it's inky, and it's got like notes of like tar and tobacco. It's a very deep, intense, serious wine. That's why we hold it back for quite a while. This being 2020, this year being 2020, this being the 2015 vintage. We make very little of this. We only make about 50 cases a year. It sells out very fast, so pretty much it's exclusive to our wine club. But it's special. My goal with these is that they do actually last until Oliver is of drinking age, him being only 10 right now. So we'll definitely be holding a few bottles of these back for years to come to see if that comes to fruition. Big, serious wine. Just coats the palate. It's really, really delicious. Very full. Very full-bodied wine. There's nothing quiet or subdued about this wine. I should note that Oliver himself is a very sweet and awesome kid, but has informed us that we are not very good homeschool teachers. I can tell you. So So as is tradition here on Morgan's Tasty Wine Notes, we always do a little bit of wine pairing. Now, the humble pizza, you know, I have to say that there's really nothing that goes better with wine at the end of the day than a delicious pizza. I mean, we can talk about all of the beautiful things in the sea, and we can talk about elaborate dishes, but really, pizza and wine, I mean, it really just doesn't get better than that. I could go to the fanciest restaurant and just order pizza, and I'm very particular to, the Neapolitan, like, thin crust pizza. So you're not just full of bread, but you just get all those delicious ingredients. We have seasonal mushrooms and Kalamata olives and artichokes. We have some local sourced sausage on one of these pies. I have some margarita with just simple tomato and basil and sauce. And no matter how fine the wine, no matter how beautiful the wine, a good pizza can just make that wine sing. And that's why I chose that today, because I think that during this time, the simple things in life have really become extra important, and there's just nothing better than moms in the world. And I've been very blessed to have many of them who influenced me greatly. So I thank you to Mom, and I thank you to Grandma, and I thank you to Great Grandma, and I thank you to Jane, and I thank you to Sally. So happy Mothers to everyone. And this coat is really hot, so rid myself of this and pick up my cane and have a bite of pizza. Happy Mother's Day, everyone.